Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Phil Andrews. We warmly welcome the family of Trooper Frederick James Everett, whose story will be told shortly. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Frederick James Everett. Frederick Everett was born on the 18th of February 1923, one of 11 children born to Cyril and Amy Everett of the Sydney suburb of Punchbowl. Known as Fred to his family and friends, he attended Punchbowl Public School before beginning an apprenticeship as a plumber. Everett enjoyed playing practical jokes and looking after his large chicken coop, in which he took great pride. He was also a keen musician who entertained his family and neighbours each year at their annual Christmas party, playing his favourite Christmas carols on his banjo mandolin. Before joining the Australian Imperial Force, Everett had gained military experience while serving in the local Belmore Militia Battalion. In March 1940, at the age of 17, Everett applied to enlist into the Australia's military force and served in World War II. Australian enlistment standards at the time prevented enlistment before the age of 19. So Everett, like many young men at the time, lied about his age in order to serve and take part in what they thought would be a great adventure. Fred was one of 3 of the Everett children to serve in the Second World War. His brother Sydney served in the Army and his brother Keith in the Air Force. Upon enlistment, Fred Everett joined the 33rd Fortress Company of the Royal Australian Engineers. This unit formed part of Australia's coast defences for the duration of the Second World War, and Everett served in the fortress that defended Port Kembla in Wollongong and the heads of Sydney Harbour. In January 1941, he transferred north to serve in the coastal defences of Queensland and served on Thursday Island, north of the Cape York Peninsula. In July 1942, he formally transferred into the Australian Imperial Force, a move that would allow him to serve in overseas operations. After a brief period of leave, he began training with the 1st Australian Commando Training Battalion in Canberra, Queensland. In August 1943, he transferred to the 26th Australian Independent Company. Independent companies were small units used for patrolling and reconnaissance duties, and later in the war formed Australia's commando squadrons. Everett embarked from Cairns on the 27th of September 1943 for Port Moresby and soon joined the 26th Independent Company in the dense jungle and mountainous terrain of central Papua and New Guinea. He joined his unit with 67 other reinforcement just days after the Battle of Kapay, in which the 26th Independent Company had successfully taken an important village and airstrip in the jungle and defended against a Japanese force more than twice their size. Everett's unit commander described the new recruits as all very young but keen. For months after Everett joined the unit, they did not take part in a major battle, but instead carried out patrols and reconnaissance missions in support of the Australian 7th Division. In January 1944, Everett was hospitalised with multiple gunshot wounds to the legs and right hand while taking part in the Markham Remove campaign in New Guinea. He returned to his unit a month later, but in April was again hospitalised, this time with malaria. His illness was so severe that he was evacuated to Sydney for treatment. While in Sydney, Everett transferred to the 2-3 Cavalry Commando Squadron, though continued to struggle with the lingering effects of his illness. After months out of action, Everett returned to overseas service in 1945, and on the 1st of July took part in Operation Oboe II. The 7th Australian Division's major amphibious landing attack and seized Balikpapan, the site of a Japanese oil and fuel depot on the southeast coast of Borneo. Everett and the 2-3 Cavalry Commando Squadron landed on the 1st of July, and though the following day came under heavy Japanese mortar fire from an area of raised ground known as Lady Schofield, they successfully captured the raised ground and advanced towards Sepingang airstrip to the east of Balikpapan along the Vassi Highway. The attack was a success, though the outnumbered Japanese forces fought hard and often to the death. On the 7th of July, while the 2-3 Cavalry Commando was engaged in mop-up operations in the aftermath of the attack on Balikpapan, Frederick Everett was killed in action. He was 22 years old. The Australian attack on Balikpapan was one of the last battles of the Second World War. Everett's death occurred only weeks before the Japanese surrender. Today, his remains lie buried in the Labuan War Cemetery, where nearly 1,800 soldiers of the Second World War now lie. His grieving family left the following epitaph on his grave: "His duty fearlessly and nobly done, treasured memories." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Trooper Frederick James Everett, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post ceremony.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.